Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Assassin's Creed Origins on the GeForce GTX 1060, 6GB for FPS monitoring. I'll be using CAM. If you want to download this software, there's a link down in the description. And if you enjoy the content and want to support the channel directly, there are Humble and Amazon affiliate links down in the description as well. So Assassin's Creed Origins, I'll be doing 1080p, 1440p and 4K. To skip any of those sections of the video, check the description below. So first I'll show you 1080p on the G4560. I'll be using ultra settings, excepting two things: environment quality and shadows. I dropped those options down from ultra to high in order for the GPU to be able to get close to 60 frames per second. And well, you'll see that the G4560 is limiting the GTX 1060, the CPU is over 90% usage, and the GPU usage can be as low as 60%, 50%, which is a noticeable classic bottleneck situation. And well, after that I switched to the Ryzen 3 1200 with a 3.9 GHz overclock, and that allows me to get some extra frames and higher GPU usage, since we have 4 cores, higher clock speeds, all that kind of stuff, but still not enough to fully utilize the GPU, so I switched to a Ryzen 7 1700 with a 3.6 GHz overclock. Also happens to have 16 GB of RAM instead of 8 GB. That doesn't make a difference, the game is not using all that memory, and you'll see that the GPU usage in that case will be over 90%, so maybe a couple drops to 88%, but it's almost fully utilizing the GPU. If you want 100% usage, maybe a higher clock type 5, a very high clock type 7, something like that. But I'm impressed how much it utilizes the Ryzen 7 1700. I saw some spikes in the CPU usage to 75%, which is impressive for a game to be utilizing all that CPU. They usually don't take advantage of the extra threads. But yeah, in order to get close to 60 frames per second, which I mean over 50 frames per second most of the time, I had to use the dynamic resolution option, which is similar to the temporal filtering option, but it's not as aggressive as on previous Ubisoft games, so the gains are like 5 FPS, at least on my end. And well, by just lowering from the ultra preset just environment and shadows from ultra to high, I was able to be over 50 frames per second and overclock the GTX 1060, and that will be enough to be over 50 FPS on 1080p. Then for 1440p, I use pretty much medium settings in order to get 60 frames per second, with the 1060 being overclocked. And finally at 4K, I just use pretty much medium settings with some stuff turned off, and it wasn't enough to get 30 frames per second. It dropped quite a bit below that target, so I also had to enable the dynamic options to 60 FPS. I chose 60 FPS in that option because it's a more aggressive dynamic resolution. If I selected the 30 FPS option, it wasn't as aggressive and I dropped below 30. But yeah guys, I'm going to talk to you about the options menu. So far, I really like the options menu. The things that gave me the biggest hit in performance were environment details and shadows, mostly. We also have an adaptive quality setting, which seems to be temporal filtering, just named as adaptive quality. It doesn't seem to be a very strong dynamic resolution. There's not a big difference visually or in performance. Sometimes I got a good boost, sometimes I didn't. Then on the other options, the other one that gave me a good boost was screen space reflections, clutter. Volumetric clouds was a small impact in performance. I mean, occlusion wasn't a big hit, but it helped out when I needed a couple extra frames. What helped me out the most was reflections, tessellation, shadows, and environment details. Environment details was a bigger impact on my CPU. Other than that, I recommend just playing with the resolution. If you don't have a good enough CPU, this game won't get to 60 frames per second. The G4560 was 50 frames per second max in the best case scenario. It wasn't constant anytime soon, so if you have a dual core with hyper-threading like the G4560, try target 30 frames per second. More than that is quite impossible, even if you have a 1080 Ti. Then if you have a Ryzen 3 1200, you can get between 45 and 60. So I recommend you try to aim for that target if you want more frames, but 60 constant was impossible. So if you want 60 FPS constant, you should have a high clocked modern i5 or better, or a Ryzen 5 overclocked as well. That should be enough to give you 60 frames per second or 50 to 60 frames per second. But it will be interesting to test this with a Coffee Lake i5. You will probably get very good results, since this game demands all that horsepower. Quite well optimized considering how good it looks, plus the draw distances it has. But yeah, it's running better than I expected. It even has a benchmark tool, which I appreciate. A very foliage dense area, plus a couple places of a big city. So the benchmark should be a good reference if you're testing. And it also tracks your last 30 seconds of gameplay and shows you the frame rates, the average and the frame times. So the game is just tracking your performance while you're playing, which is awesome. Just pause the game, go into the options menu, and you have your last 30 seconds of performance just in the game itself, which more games should have. And in this options menu you can see the difference between each preset just by looking at the picture on the right, so you know what you're changing, which also is an awesome touch. The options menu in this game is top notch. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video, thanks for watching and see you next time.
Get out of my way! I must be careful now.
Is anyone there? If I wasn't a priest, I'd bash in all your skulls.
Hey, stop the bastard! You're finished! We must keep up! There you are!
Going to gut you! What?
You play to your strength! In a unit!
Alarm! Follow me!
He is mine! The gods have some other purpose for me.
Brother! This way! Die, you! Damn!
Like you can take Motherboard. Too close for my liking.
You will pay, corpse!
Trouble here! Come on!
Time to be exterminated!
Alarm! Got trouble here!
Get me out of here!
The oldest, my lord.
One may have heard an ancient story. No. Is anyone there? If I were... Is someone there? Damn you all! What? I've got you, dog.
You will suffer! Protect the Acontas first! Take much dedication becoming a champion, idiot?
Got a problem here! Get me out of here!
Hey! Die, idiot! Starting a blaze! Your time has come.
Die! What
Brother!
This way! You're dead!
Come on, lads! This way! Should have played to your strength. Been a eunuch.
Come on, then. If someone's there, let me out and fight me. Hey, after him! Hey, wait! Hey! Is someone there? I'll get the fire going. Time is up! I'll get the fire going. Come on!
Hey now. Nowhere you can run from now.
Target in range!
Accept
wait.
your fate.
Got him lined up.
Last breath you'll take. Did I play to your strength? Being a eunuch.
Worm can have it. Ready for Abyss? Killing to be done.
Hey now.
Stand and fight. Get that damn fool down.
Wait a sec. You face the boat, man.
Mine now.
Got you.
Come on! Shit!
You will regret that. I'll rip your power down right